The night air in downtown Chicago was sharp with the promise of snow, the city wrapped in the glittering hush that always followed the first frost. Ethan Gray stepped out of the towering glass building where the tech gala had just wrapped up. Another event, another photo op, another check written for some cause he could barely remember. His tuxedo clung tightly to his frame, crisp and tailored, but suffocating. The buzz of conversation and clinking glasses still echoed faintly in his ears. He needed air. Traffic hummed, and somewhere in the distance, a saxophone player crooned something mournful. But then, beneath it all, cutting through the noise and cold like a blade, a voice. "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine." Ethan stopped dead. The melody was soft, untrained, but hauntingly pure. A girl's voice, cracking just a little at the high notes, breathy from the cold, but still warm somehow. It wasn't just the song that stopped him. It was the way she sang it. The rhythm, the tone, the exact same way Lily used to. His heart stuttered in his chest. He turned slowly, like if he moved too fast, he'd scare the sound away. And there she was, on the corner across the street. A girl, maybe 15 or 16, bundled in a ratty gray coat too thin for the weather, fingers red from the cold, clutching a chipped ukulele. Her boots had holes in them. Her jeans were torn at the knee. But she stood there, eyes closed, singing like her life depended on it. Ethan's lungs forgot how to work. His blood roared in his ears. For a second, the world just vanished. Lily. No, it couldn't be. Lily had vanished 9 years ago, just before her 8th birthday. Taken from a crowded summer fair, while Ethan took a call he never should have answered. One moment, she was laughing with her balloon. The next, she was gone. No leads. No trace. No body. She was gone. But the girl in front of him was a ghost with skin. The tilt of her chin. The way she squinted slightly on high notes. Exactly the way Lily had. A street performer nearby threw her a look and barked out. "Wrap it up, Ella. You're late again." Ella. Ethan's heart cracked. She looked up, startled, and shoved a few coins into her coat pocket. She started to walk off. He stepped into the street without thinking. Horns blared. Tires screeched, but he barely noticed. He couldn't let her disappear again. "Hey, wait," he called, but the girl kept walking, faster now. He followed her for 2 blocks, his polished shoes slipping on the icy sidewalk. She darted into an alleyway, and he caught up just as she turned to glance back at him. For a second, their eyes met, and that's when he saw it. A thin, pale scar on her left hand, just below the thumb. The same scar Lily got the day she fell off her bike when she was 5. Ethan stopped breathing. No, it wasn't possible, but somehow it was. It was a day scorched into Ethan's memory, one he'd never escape, no matter how many years passed or how much success he accumulated. 9 years ago, the world had still been bright, before silence and guilt became his constant companions. It was the 4th of July. Grant Park was packed with families, the air thick with the smell of kettle corn and cotton candy. The sun was brutal, kids shrieking with delight as they chased bubbles and darted between booths. Lily had begged to wear her favorite dress, yellow with little sunflowers, the one that made her spin in circles and sing to herself. Ethan had been there with Julia, his wife, and their nanny, Madison. He'd promised to unplug for the day, no business calls, no emails, just family. But tech deals didn't wait for national holidays. When his assistant called, saying a major investor was threatening to pull out, he'd stepped away to take the call. Just 10 minutes. 10 minutes. When he returned, the world had shifted. Madison was in tears, frantically scanning the crowd. Lily's balloon, red, heart-shaped, was floating above the throng, tethered to nothing. Madison stammered something about turning to grab napkins, about how Lily had been right there. Then gone. Ethan had dropped the phone. Julia screamed. The police were called within minutes. They locked the area down, helicopters swooped over the city, Amber Alerts lit up phones across Illinois. Every witness was questioned. Every crevice searched. But there was nothing. No surveillance footage. No one who remembered seeing a little girl in a sunflower dress. Just nothing. The days that followed bled into each other. Ethan didn't sleep. Julia didn't stop crying. Their perfect world cracked, then crumbled. Grief hollowed out their marriage. Julia turned to sleeping pills first, then something stronger. By the end of the year, Ethan had filed for divorce. Not out of anger, but out of pure, soul-wrenching exhaustion. They couldn't keep drowning together. He hired private investigators, spent millions combing through dead leads and empty promises. One former FBI profiler told him she believed Lily had been taken by someone who had planned it. But they had no name, no motive, no answers, just theories. Back in the present, Ethan sat in the dark of his penthouse, the only light coming from the flickering television that played old home videos on repeat. He reached for the photo album he hadn't opened in years. His hands trembled as he flipped to one of his favorite pictures. Lily, 5 years old, grinning with a gap-toothed smile, holding an orange popsicle and pointing to the tiny scar on her hand. "See? I'm brave," she had declared. He zoomed in on a screen grab of the girl from the street. The angle was grainy, but clear enough. Same hand, same scar. It couldn't be a coincidence. He didn't sleep that night. Instead, he made a single phone call to someone he hadn't spoken to in 5 years. "Find her," he said into the phone. "Her name on the street is Ella. She sings near Monroe and Wabash. I want everything. Where she lives, who she's with, who's watching her." There was a pause on the other end. "Is this about Lily?" Ethan's voice cracked. "She's alive. I know it. This time, I won't lose her." The shelter smelled like wet wool and despair. Mold clung to the corners like rot on old fruit, and every creak of the floorboards echoed like a warning. Ella kept her bunk by the window, though the glass was cracked and leaked during storms. At least she could see the streetlights at night. At least she could pretend she wasn't invisible. She was 16. At least she thought she was. Birthdays didn't mean much when you didn't have a birth certificate or anyone to remember them with. Some social worker had estimated her age when she was brought into the system at around 8 years old. No one knew where she'd come from, and Ella had never been able to give them much. Her memories were like a jigsaw puzzle with half the pieces missing and the rest chewed up by time. She remembered music, not songs, feelings, warmth, a soft voice humming her to sleep, a woman maybe, and a man laughing, and sunflowers. But then everything would go black again. She'd been bouncing between foster homes, shelters, and group homes since she could remember. Most of them were forgettable. Some were nightmares. The shelter was at least neutral. It didn't hurt her, but it didn't help her either. The city was her real school, her real family. She'd learned to navigate downtown Chicago like a ghost, finding the right street corners and subway stops where tourists were generous and cops didn't ask too many questions. Every weekend, she'd sing near Monroe and Wabash. Her voice had become her armor, her currency, her secret weapon. People stopped when she sang. Something in her voice seemed to reach deep into their bones. She didn't know why. She only knew that when she closed her eyes and let the music out, it was like her soul remembered something her mind had forgotten. That's when the man came. He didn't look like the usual creeps. He was older, dressed well, but not flashy, with a kind smile and careful hands. He came to the shelter one rainy afternoon with a tray of food, real food. Chicken, potatoes, fresh bread, not the processed stuff the shelter usually scraped together. "I'm looking for someone," he said gently. "Someone you remind me of." Ella narrowed her eyes. "You the cops?" "No," he shook his head. "I'm just someone trying to bring a family back together." She didn't trust him. She never trusted anyone. But she was starving, and he hadn't asked for anything yet. She let him sit with her by the window, and together they listened to the rain slide down the cracked glass. Then he pulled out the photo. It was faded, a little girl with blonde curls and a wide smile, holding a stuffed elephant and squinting at the camera. There was something achingly familiar about her. The moment Ella saw it, Her breath caught. Her fingers trembled. She dropped the picture. Who is she? Her voice came out like smoke. The man studied her closely. Her name was Lily Gray. She disappeared when she was 7. Ella stared at the picture, heart thudding so loud she thought the whole room could hear it. Something in her chest twisted, something old and buried. Her lips moved before she could stop them. I've seen that girl before. She looked up at him, her eyes glassy, distant. In my dreams. They met in a quiet cafe near the lakefront, one of those upscale places with too many windows and not enough warmth. Ethan had chosen it because it was public, safe, but not too busy. He didn't want to scare her. He didn't want to scare himself. Ella walked in hesitantly, wrapped in a borrowed coat that swallowed her frame. Her eyes darted around like a hunted animal's. But when she saw Ethan, tall, salt and pepper hair, warm eyes trying to hide years of grief, she paused. Something flickered across her face. Recognition? Or just nerves? Ella, he said, standing. Or, do you prefer another name? She shook her head. It's the only one I've ever had. They sat. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was heavy, dense with things unspoken. Ethan wanted to tell her everything at once. About her real name. Her room with the yellow walls. The stuffed elephant she carried everywhere. How she used to sing to the dog in the backyard like it was a concert. But he didn't. He just started slow. My daughter, Lily, disappeared 9 years ago. She was 7. You'd be 16 now. Same age as you. Ella picked at a napkin. What happened to her? He exhaled. We were at a summer fair. One moment she was holding a balloon. The next, she was gone. The whole city searched. Police, helicopters, Amber Alerts. Nothing. She vanished. Ella didn't speak. She just stared at her hands. I know it's a lot, he added gently. I'm not asking you to believe me right away. I'm just asking you to take a DNA test. No pressure. But I need to know. She finally looked up, her eyes searching his. And then she nodded. Okay. The test was done the next morning. Simple cheek swabs. Ella was quiet the whole time, but Ethan saw her mind racing behind her eyes. He wanted to reach out, to hug her, but he held back. She wasn't his yet. Not officially. Not until the test said so. While they waited, the past clawed its way back into Ella's mind. Dark rooms. A padlock on the outside of the door. A woman's voice, cold, clipped, never kind, telling her she was Emily now. That her real family died in a fire. That the world was dangerous and she was lucky to be alive. She remembered trying to escape once. Remembered being dragged back by her hair. The sting of a slap. The silent meals. The singing. Always the singing, the only comfort she had. Meanwhile, Ethan was digging. The PI, his old friend Thomas, finally cracked the buried files of a long-forgotten police report. A lead that had been overlooked. The nanny, Madison Hayes. She'd been drowning in gambling debt. And just before Lily vanished, she'd received a wire transfer from a name that didn't match her lifestyle, Mara Vellon, known associate of an underground trafficking ring. She didn't lose Lily. She sold her. Ethan felt the bile rise in his throat. He couldn't breathe, couldn't sit. Rage and guilt mixed into a poison that burned through his veins. All those years, and Lily had been out there. Trapped. Alone. Then came the call. The DNA results were in. He raced to the clinic. She was already there, seated in the corner, legs drawn up like a child. The counselor entered, paper in hand. 99.99% match, she said softly. She's your daughter. Ethan collapsed into the chair, head in his hands. A sob broke free before he could stop it. Years of grief, guilt, and longing poured out in one ragged breath. Ella didn't move at first. Then, silently, she reached into her pocket and pulled out something small, a faded ribbon. Yellow, like the one Lily wore in her hair the day she disappeared. She held it in her palm, trembling. And then, she cried. Ethan didn't expect miracles. He didn't expect her to wake up and call him Dad, or run into his arms like in the movies. What he got instead were quiet breakfasts and long silences. He rented her a room in a safe apartment building across from his, furnished it simply, soft blankets, warm light, a bookshelf already stacked with fiction and music biographies. She chose a corner and sat there for hours that first night, knees pulled to her chest, headphones on. He didn't push. He just brought hot meals and left them by the door, asked questions only when she looked like she wanted them. The first week passed like a fog. She didn't speak much, didn't ask about her mother, didn't show emotion when he offered her childhood photo albums. But she looked. He caught her once, flipping through a page slowly, fingertips tracing the outline of a chubby-cheeked little girl in pigtails holding a stuffed bear. His name was Bruno, Ethan said softly. You never went to bed without him. Ella blinked, startled. Bruno. That was the first thread. So he tried more. They took a walk to Lincoln Park on a chilly Sunday morning. She was tense, hood pulled up, hands in pockets. But something in the way the wind rustled the trees, or the sound of a street musician playing acoustic guitar nearby, made her pause. You used to run through here like a little tornado, Ethan said, smiling faintly. One time you fed an entire granola bar to a squirrel. It threw up right in front of us. A short laugh escaped her. She looked at him like she didn't mean to, like it surprised her. The following day, he brought out the old music box. The ballerina inside twirled to a lullaby tune so familiar it made his throat tighten. I remember this, she said slowly. It was on my nightstand. I used to wind it up when I was scared. Ethan just nodded, afraid if he spoke, he'd break the moment. And then the big one. She wandered into his apartment one night while he was strumming his guitar, absently, like he'd done a million times before. The same way he used to lull Lily to sleep with soft renditions of James Taylor and the Beatles. Ella stood there in the doorway, frozen. Her voice cracked. That song, Fire and Rain. You used to sing that. He looked up. Their eyes locked. I did, he said, fingers stilling on the strings. Every night. She walked in, sat down across from him. I remember you, she said. Her voice was small but certain. You were singing. And I was in bed. The bear was there. I wasn't afraid. Ethan felt tears sting his eyes before he could stop them. She still didn't call him Dad. Not yet. But she let him hug her. She leaned in when he did. That was enough. Meanwhile, far from their slow reunion, Mara Velen was losing her grip. The news had broken. Missing heiress found alive after 9 years. Tech CEO's daughter reunited in shocking twist. Mara watched from a dusty motel room in Kansas. Her wig was crooked. Her burner phone buzzed every hour. She was running out of money, out of names to drop, out of time. She knew they'd come for her, and she wasn't planning on going quietly. But first, she needed to disappear, or silence the one person who could truly expose her. The girl she once called Emily. The courtroom was cold, clinical, like a museum that only displayed trauma. Everything was too bright, too clean, and smelled faintly of disinfectant and dust. The wooden bench beneath Ella felt like ice. Her hands trembled in her lap as she stared across the room at the woman who had stolen her childhood. Mara Velen sat behind the defense table, her expression unreadable. Her silver-streaked hair was pulled into a tight bun, and she wore a drab gray suit that looked borrowed. But her eyes, those same eyes that had once watched Lily sob through nightmares, were as sharp and calculating as ever. She looked right at her, and didn't blink. Ella wanted to shrink into herself, but Ethan was there, just a few feet away in the gallery. His hands were clenched, jaw set, but his eyes held hers, anchored her. When the judge called her name, she stood. She walked to the stand like she wasn't 16 but 60, like she carried lifetimes on her shoulders. And maybe she did. The prosecutor asked gentle questions. Her full name, where she lived now, how long she'd been missing. Then, the harder ones. Do you recognize the defendant? Her voice didn't crack when she said, yes. That's Mara. She called me Emily. She told me my parents died in a fire. She locked me in a room for days if I disobeyed. Mara's attorney objected, leading the witness, irrelevant details, emotional manipulation. Overruled. Ella kept going. She spoke of other children, ones who came and went, of Mara's rage when she asked too many questions, of being made to sing for money when food ran low, of bruises hidden under long sleeves, of escape attempts and punishments, of fear so deep it became normal. She told me I was lucky, Ella said, her voice steadier now, that no one wanted me but her, that the world was dangerous and full of liars. But she was the liar. The courtroom was silent. Even Mara's expression slipped. Just for a second. By the time Ella stepped down, even the judge looked shaken. Outside, the media had descended like vultures. Ethan kept his daughter behind tinted windows and guards. He refused interviews, declined comment. His only focus was her. That night, back in his apartment, they sat on the couch, the TV muted. Ethan poured them both mugs of tea. Ella held hers close, steam curling toward her face. "You were amazing today," he said quietly. "You didn't have to do that, but you did." "I needed to," she replied. "For the others. For myself." He looked at her then, not as the girl who had vanished, or the teen who reappeared with ghosts in her eyes, but as someone whole. Scarred, yes, but stronger than he could have imagined. "I spent years blaming myself," he said, voice raw. "Every night I wondered what I missed, what I didn't do. I was your father. I should have protected you." She turned to him, eyes gleaming. "You didn't fail me," she whispered. "You came back for me." Ethan reached out and gripped her hand, careful, like it was something sacred. The next day, the verdict came in. Guilty, on all counts. Mara didn't look at Ella once as she was led away in cuffs, but Ella watched her. And for the first time, the girl once called Emily didn't feel small. She felt free. A soft breeze rustled the spring leaves outside the cozy Chicago coffee house, where the windows glowed gold against the darkened sidewalk. Inside, the air buzzed with quiet conversation, clinking mugs, and the low hum of anticipation. A handwritten chalkboard near the stage read, "Open mic night, 7 p.m. Ethan Gray sat near the back, a steaming latte cradled in his hands. He wore a soft sweater instead of his usual suit jacket, and for once, the constant weight in his chest had eased. 1 year had passed since the trial. 1 year since the girl who'd once vanished into thin air had stepped back into his life. Lily, no longer Ella, no longer just a missing child in old newspaper clippings, had started high school again. She was in therapy twice a week. Sometimes she cried. Sometimes she didn't speak for hours. But sometimes she laughed. Loud and real. She was healing, slowly, stubbornly. And Ethan had never admired anyone more. Next up, the host said into the mic, "We've got a very special voice. Please welcome Lily Gray." The room gave a polite round of applause. Ethan's heart did something strange in his chest, a skip, a stutter. Lily stepped onto the stage with her guitar slung over her shoulder. Her long hair was pulled back in a braid, and a small silver ring glinted in her nose. Her idea of teenage rebellion. Ethan didn't mind. It reminded him she was living, choosing, becoming. She adjusted the mic and smiled nervously. "Hi. This is a song I wrote. It's about finding your way back when you didn't think you had one." She strummed a few soft chords. Then she began to sing. Her voice was low and a little rough around the edges, still a girl's, but with echoes of everything she'd lived through. The lyrics weren't polished, but they were raw, beautiful. "I was a shadow on the sidewalk, a whisper in the night, a name no one remembered, a flame without a light." The room fell into reverent silence. But I heard a song through the silence, a name I used to know, and someone reached into the dark and told me, "You can go home." Ethan's eyes blurred, not because she could sing, he'd already known that, but because she'd survived, because she was still here. When she finished, the crowd clapped gently, then louder. She smiled, a little stunned by the response, and her eyes searched the room until they landed on him. She came straight over, guitar still in hand. Before he could say anything, she wrapped her arms around him and buried her face in his chest. "You're my dad," she murmured. "I know that now, all the way in my bones." Ethan blinked hard and held her tight. "And you're my Lily. Always were." The coffee house lights dimmed slightly as the next performer stepped up, but Ethan didn't notice. He'd once lost his daughter to the dark. But this time, nothing would take her away again. Please rate the story on a scale of 1 to 10. Let us know, what do you think? Your support means the world, and we can't wait to bring you more incredible stories like this.